Okay, I've decided to name this presentation Take Heed. Before we get started, one thing that I want to do is I want to let you know that there will be things that I read on screen, and there will be things that I don't read. That's why I decided to go through with it this way, so that you can pause the screen and you can do your own research. Okay, so let's jump into it. Take heed. Who we are. What was done to us and why. So, this presentation in the beginning is going to be about identifying who we are as people. Of course, I'm speaking predominantly to the 12 tribes of Israel. So I'm talking to Judah, who is predominantly the Negroes in America today. The African Americans. That's what they like to call us, right? But that's not who we are. We are the tribe of Judah. The Puerto Ricans, Ephraim. Cubans, Manasseh. Jamaica, West Indies, Benjamin, the warrior. Mexicans, Issachar. The Haitians, Levi. Hawaiians and Samoans, Naphtali. Seminole Indians and the Aboriginals of Australia, Reuben. Panama, Colombia, Zebulun. Brazil, Argentina, Asher. Dominicans, Simeon. And the North American Indians, Gad. You know, really what you're talking about, when you're talking about those 10 northern tribes, you're talking about all the indigenous peoples of the quote-unquote New World. So understand that our people had two kingdoms, Israel and Judah, north and south. And so the northern kingdom was the 10 tribes. We were a kingdom divided. So the northern kingdom got taken into captivity by the Assyrians. And that's how they got dispersed throughout the world. 2 Ezra 13 and 40 says that those that are the 10 tribes which were carried away prisoners out of their own land in the time of Oshea the king, whom Salmanasar, the king of Assyria, led away captive, and he carried them over the waters, and so came they into another land. Now, I bet you're wondering about 2nd Ezra. So, well, it looks like I put this slide in the wrong place. We'll come back to it. Oh, man. What a mistake. Okay, so we'll edit this thing. And we'll edit it right after I say, I bet you're wondering about 2nd Ezra. Well, you know what? Let's just start that part over. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, yada, yada, yada. Okay. 2 Ezra 13 and 40 says, those that are the 10 tribes, which were carried away prisoners out of their own land in the time of Oshea the king, whom Salmanasar the king of Assyria led away captive, and he carried them over the waters, and so came they into another land. Now I bet you're wondering about 2nd Ezra. Well, hold your horses. We're going to discuss 2nd Ezra a little bit later, and I'm going to show you why the Apocrypha is valid. Now the southern tribes, Matthew 24 and 16 says, Then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. Now this was Christ giving a warning to them, telling people what they need to do to survive, telling our people to flee into the mountains, to be specific, the Atlas Mountains in Africa. Yeah, that's the wilderness. Anyway, the history of this event is recorded in the works of Flavius Josephus. I'm not going to go into Flavius Josephus for this presentation, but I'm letting you know so you can look that up for yourself. That history is recorded history that the world actually agrees with. Now, this map shows how they dispersed when they went into those mountains. It shows where exactly they went. But we're going to get into the transatlantic slave trade a little bit later in this presentation. But I want to show you this map right now, because it shows you those areas. You see that area right there of West Africa? That was predominantly where they came and took us from. This map shows Africa up close, and it shows Negro land. Yeah, because, you know, African Americans were never called African. We were just called Negroes. So yeah, Negro land. And then, when you zoom in a little bit, you'll see the Kingdom of Judah. Look at that. The Kingdom of Judah. This is a map from 1747. Yeah, see, they know who we are. Now let's talk about scrolls. The very fact that there were scrolls is so important. Understand that back in the Bible days, nobody was carrying around little books that they called the Bible. Instead, they were going to scrolls. They would go, when they wanted to go into a particular book of the Bible, they would go into that scroll. So understand that there was not a compendium. This is important when you're talking about the Bible in general, because you have to understand that what we have today as the Bible is what men decided was spiritually inspired. But that's not the way our ancestors did it. So understand that there were scrolls, and they went into them for the word. Now, the Apocrypha. That's where that second Ezra from earlier was. It is in the Apocrypha. First of all, let's talk about the 1611 King James Version Bible. That was the Bible that King James, who was a black man, authorized and had distributed. This is very important to understand, because this Bible actually, inside of it, has the Apocrypha. And the authorized versions of it actually have the decree telling you why he did what he did. So don't believe all those horrible rumors you hear about King James. King James was a great man. King James was a black man. King James was one of us. And he knew who his enemies were. Now, in the Apocrypha, there is the rest of Esther. If you go into the Bible that most of you probably have at home, you look in that thing and you see Esther is a short book. And right there in the middle of the chapter, it just stops. Well, if you go into the Apocrypha, it picks up right where it left off. So understand that the Esther in most of your Bibles is incomplete. And now, the empires. You know, when you go into Daniel, it talks about the four beasts. And the Bible gives you a history of those beasts. However, One of the beasts is missing. To get the history on the Greek beast, you've got to go into the Apocrypha. Your Bible's incomplete without the Apocrypha inside of it. So if you want to read about all four kingdoms, all four beasts, then you need your Apocrypha. The New World, the Americas. Yeah, that's in the Apocrypha. Surprise! It's in there. Before we got over here, they already knew about it. The Book of Enoch. If you read in Jude 1 and 14, you'll see that they actually quote the Book of Enoch. Also, Hebrews 11:15. And Enoch itself, if you go into it, tells you that it's given to the righteous. Now, maybe that doesn't mean anything to some of you, but to us that understand, to us that actually operate within the Holy Spirit, it means a lot. Now, let's talk curses. Understand that we, our people, were cursed because of our disobedience. So, Deuteronomy 28:15 reads, But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee. Now, I'm not going to go into all of the curses, just for time's sake. We have a lot of material to cover, and I have children. So, who fills the prisons? Isaiah 42 and 22. But this is a people robbed and spoiled. They are all of them snared in holes, and they are hid in prison houses. They are for a prey, and none delivereth for a spoil, and none saith, Restore. So understand that we are the ones who fill the prison houses, Take a look at this. Look at the numbers on the black and Hispanic versus the white. Yeah. Now, I'm not trying to make this about race, but understand that race is important according to the Bible. People like to say all men are created equal, but that's not what the Bible says. The Bible says that we are a chosen people, and that means something. Anyway, we do the work, they reap the benefits. Deuteronomy 28:33. The fruit of thy land and all labors shall a nation which thou knowest not eat up, and thou shalt be only oppressed and crushed alway. We do the work. They reap the benefits. We do the work. They reap the benefits. They will take our babies, and they shall go into captivity. Deuteronomy 28:32. Thy sons and thy daughters shall be given unto another people, and thine eyes shall look and fail with longing for them all day long, and there shall be no might in thine hand. Thou shalt beget sons and daughters, but thou shalt not enjoy them, for they shall go into captivity. They will take our babies, and they shall go into captivity. They took our babies and put them into captivity. They will sleep with our wives, and we shall build their houses. Deuteronomy 28:30. Thou shalt betroth a wife, and another man shall lie with her. Thou shalt build a house, and thou shalt not dwell therein. Thou shalt plant a vineyard, and shalt not gather the grapes thereof. I think that this set of photos speaks for itself. On the left there, you can see this man taking this man's wife as they're hanging him. Over here, you can see the house, the plantation house that was actually built by slaves. But look at what they made us live in. Scattered. Deuteronomy 28:55, the Lord shall cause thee to be smitten before thine enemies. Thou shalt go out one way against them, and flee 7 ways before them, and shalt be removed into all kingdoms of the earth. Let me repeat that, into all kingdoms of the earth. Leviticus 26:33, and I will scatter you among the heathen, and will draw out a sword after you, and your land shall be desolate, and your cities waste. Jeremiah 9:16, I will scatter them also among the heathen, whom neither they nor their fathers have known, and I will send a sword after them, till I have consumed them. Jeremiah 18:17, I will scatter them as with an east wind before the enemy. I will shew them the back and not the face in the day of their calamity. So you see, all these verses talk about us being scattered amongst our enemy. Talk about us not owning anything. Talk about us being in servitude, being servants, being slaves. This is us. Here we have the transatlantic slave trade. It shows where they took us from the western shores of Africa. Remember the map from earlier where I showed you how we went into Africa? Well, take a look. This is how they dispersed us, the transatlantic slave trade. Why does it matter? Important question. We're going to answer this question, but first, let's explore some unique attributes of the Israelites. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a hind. As you can see, it is a deer. A hind is a female deer, a doe. Remember that from elementary school? A doe, a deer, a female deer? Anyway, female deer can run at speeds of about 40 miles per hour. Genesis 49:21 says, Naphtali is a hind let loose. He giveth goodly words. In the Testament of Naphtali, 1:13 it says, And I was swift on my feet like the deer, and my father Jacob appointed me for all messages, and as a deer did he give me his blessing. So Naphtali was fast, but how fast was he? In the ancient book of Jasher, 56 and 59, it says, And Naphtali hearkened to the voice of Joseph, and he hastened and ran to go down to Egypt. And Naphtali was lighter on foot than any of the stags that were upon the wilderness, for he would go upon the ears of corn without crushing them. I want you guys to get a real mental picture in your head of how fast you have to run upon ears of corn without crushing them. Dude was fast. And here you see the Marvel and DC characters, Quicksilver and the Flash. Who do you think they are based on? Yeah, Naphtali. He was the speedster. Now, take a look at these pictures. Colossians 2:18 says, Let no man beguile you of your reward in a voluntary humility and worshipping of angels, intruding into those things which he hath not, seen vainly puffed up by his fleshly mind. When I was a kid, I was really into comic books and superheroes and all of those things. And to be honest with you, even when I was adult, even as I am an adult, though I am not into that now, much of my adult life was spent still glorifying some of the images you see before you right now. I was deeply into it, reading comic books all the time. So yeah, take a good look and think about who it is you're really paying homage to when you read these things. Yeah, fallen angels, that's who. For this presentation, I don't want to delve into the superhero topic, but I want to encourage you to research how the idolatry of so-called superheroes is really the worship of fallen angels. Now let's get back to those attributes. Let's take a look at Judah. Testament of Judah, chapter 1, 7 through 15. And the Lord showed me favor in all my works, both in the field and in the house. I know that I raced a hind and caught it, and prepared the meat for my father, and he did eat. And the roes I used to master in the chase, and overtake all that was in the plains. A wild mare I overtook, and caught it, and tamed it. I slew a lion, and plucked a kid out of his mouth. I took a bear by its paw, and hurled it down a cliff, and it was crushed. I outran a wild boar, and seizing it as I ran, I tore it in sunder. A leopard in Hebron leaped upon my dog, and I caught it by the tail, and hurled it on the rocks, and it was broken in twain. I found a wild ox feeding in the fields, and seizing it by the horns, and whirling it around and stunning it, I cast it from me and slew it. Ancient Book of Jasher, 38 and 34. And about 200 men fled from the city, and they all went and hid themselves in a certain tower in the city. And Judah pursued them to the tower, and he broke down the tower, which fell upon the men, and they all died. Ancient Book of Jasher 58, 28 to 29. And when Judah heard this thing, he was exceedingly wroth, and his anger burned within him. And there before him in that place a stone, the weight of which was about 400 shekels. And Judah's anger was kindled, and he took the stone in one hand, and cast it to the heavens, and caught it with his left hand. And he placed it afterward under his legs, and he sat upon it with all his strength, and the stone was turned into dust from the force of Judah. The stone was turned into dust from the force of Judah. So I said we were going to answer the question, why does it matter who we are? It matters who we are because this is the power that we can command. Understand that if you do on earth as is done in heaven, and you operate the way we are supposed to be operating, then this strength that you read about with these men, this strength can be ours again. All of our brethren, all the tribes, we all had gifts. And right now we operate with the remnant of those gifts. Yeah. It's still helping us out today, some of this stuff. I'm showing you this because it is important that you understand that this is in the realm of possibility. The roar of Judah. Ancient Book of Jasher 54, 43 through 47. Then Judah hastened and drew his sword and uttered a loud and bitter scream. And he smote with his sword, and he sprang upon the ground, and he still continued to shout against all the people. And when he did this thing, the Lord caused the terror of Judah and his brethren to fall upon the valiant men and all the people that surrounded them. And they all fled at the sound of the people. Skip the sentence. And they all fled at the sound of the shouting, and they were terrified and fell one upon the other. And many of them died as they fell, and they all fled from before Judah and his brethren, and from before Joseph. And while they were fleeing, Judah and his brethren pursued them into the house of Pharaoh. And they all escaped. And Judah again sat before Joseph, and roared at him like a lion, and gave a great and tremendous shriek at him. And the shriek was heard at a distance, and all the inhabitants of Succoth heard it, and all of Egypt quaked at the sound of the shriek. And also the walls of Egypt and of the land of Goshen fell in from the shaking of the earth. And Pharaoh also fell from his throne upon the ground. And all the pregnant women of Egypt and Goshen miscarried when they heard the noise of the shaking, for they were terribly afraid. So, wow. Just to expound upon the strength of Judah, look at the strength. And there's several other instances. I did not put everything in this presentation, but there are other times where Judah and a few of his brothers would shriek, and they would stun men, and other miraculous things would happen. This just shows you the power that can be ours again, that will be ours again. Fleas. Zig Ziglar tells a story in his book, See You at the Top. You can place some fleas in a jar with a lid on it. The fleas will of course begin to jump, repeatedly hitting the lid in their attempt to escape. After about 20 minutes, the fleas begin to learn that they cannot escape and stop jumping as high as they did to begin with, to avoid smacking their head on the lid. Once you become accustomed to the fact that they cannot escape, you can remove the lid and the fleas will continue to jump at the same height, never escaping the jar. Since the fleas believe they cannot escape the confines of the jar, they stop trying. Because of their experience with smacking their heads repeatedly, every time they tried to escape, they never even bothered looking up to see the lid is no longer there. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a perfect example of the way that they treat us. You see, by telling us that we are not the people of the Bible, then we have forgotten the power that we once wielded. We won't try to be the people of the Bible because we don't believe that we are. We're just like the fleas. And that in itself is a curse. But we are waking up. So again, why does it matter? We are the promised seed. And the power that we command is great. Now, Luke 24:44 says, And he said unto them, These are the words which I spake unto you, while I was yet with you, that all things must be fulfilled, which were written in the law of Moses, and in the prophets, and in the Psalms concerning me. To me, this verse clearly tells us how important the Old Testament is, because all those things in Luke 24 and 44 are in the Old Testament. Once you realize this, once you wake up to this truth, once you realize who you are, then the elder or pastor or reverend or whatever you want to call him that you're sitting under, that person should also be in the truth. Because if not, Matthew 15 and 14 says, Let them alone, they be blind leaders of the blind. And if the blind lead the blind, both shall fall into the ditch. So, step away from the church you are in if the pastor who is over you won't adhere to this truth. Point blank, period. Christ stated that he came to fulfill the law, and followed that up by saying that whosoever shall teach the law will be called great in heaven. This means that if we follow Christ, we should be trying to follow the law. We may not be able to follow it to the letter because we are in captivity, but this is where grace comes in. Matthew 5:17 through 19 says, "Think not that I am come to destroy the law or the prophets. I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill. For verily I say unto you, till heaven and earth pass, one jot or one tittle in no wise pass from the law, till all be fulfilled. Whosoever therefore shall break one of these least commandments, and shall teach men so, he shall be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whosoever shall do and teach them, the same shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven." So how did we get the false doctrine? This guy, Rome, 325 AD, Emperor Constantine. So there were too many religions in Rome. A council was called, the Council of Nicaea, in an endeavor to amalgamate the many religions of the Roman Empire into one. They plagiarized older myths and legends, historicized to suit the Roman Catholic Church while combining the numerous religions existing at the time: Krishna, Horus, Mithraism, Osirian, Isis, and many other mystery religions. The Nicene Creed enforced the decision of the Roman Catholic Church to move the Sabbath from the seventh day to the first day. Sunday worship was observed by Nimrod during the construction of the Tower of Babel. Exodus 31:16 and 17 says, "Wherefore the children of Israel shall keep the Sabbath, to observe the Sabbath throughout their generations for a perpetual covenant. It is a sign between me and the children of Israel forever. For in 6 days the Lord hath made heaven and earth, and on the seventh day he rested and was refreshed." So this says that it was the decision of the Roman Catholic Church to move the Sabbath from the seventh day to the first. So something that God himself set in place, man decided they could change. They ignored the clear doctrine of the Bible, and they pushed a false doctrine based on the misunderstanding of Paul's complex writings. Constantine did away with the biblical holy day of Passover and instituted Easter. They would eventually do away with the holy days of the Most High and give us holidays assigned with sacred days of various pagan religions. So right now, if you look at a lot of the holidays that we follow, you'll see that they actually line up with Greek and Roman days. They pay homage to those gods, because understand that there are certain days that we are supposed to do certain things. And just like there are days of positivity, there are also days where you can do things that have a negative effect. So a lot of these fallen angels, these fallen gods, they have certain days that you do things to them too. In other words, you take part in certain days and you're busting hell wide open. They pushed the dismissal of the Old Testament, but I caution you to take heed of Christ's words. Luke 24:44-45. "And he said unto them, These are the words which I spake unto you while I was yet with you, that all things must be fulfilled, which were written in the law of Moses, and in the prophets, and in the Psalms concerning me." Then opened he their understanding, that they might understand the Scriptures. How can one understand the end without understanding the beginning? In order to understand the New Testament, you need to have a strong understanding of the Old Testament. Take heed. I titled this presentation, Take Heed, for a reason. Let's identify the powers and principalities that are against us, the rulers of darkness who operate in spiritual wickedness in high places. So who's against us? The Jewish synagogue, synagogue of Satan, the Jewish Zionist, the Pope and the Roman Catholic Church, the Masons, the evil families, Rothschilds, English royal family, etc., the government, the educational system. So, the Jewish synagogue. These people who say they are the Jews but are not. These people who cover their head with their hats when the Bible tells you that men should keep the crown of their head exposed. These people who wear black when the Bible tells you to wear white. So, this group alone is responsible for virtually all wars and bloodshed on the face of this planet. This evil cabal is few in numbers, but like a deadly octopus, its tentacles reach out to grip and strangle untold multitudes of innocent victims. The initiates of every secret society and internationalist organization, from the Council of Foreign Relations and the Jesuits to the Bilderbergers and the Order of Skull and Bones, obey the dictates of this sinister group and tremble when standing before its leaders. The Kabbalist group I am referring to is the Synagogue of Satan, an ancient yet modern elite so politically powerful and so fabulously wealthy that even past history has been twisted, reshaped, and revised to meet its preferred version of humanity's gloomy, totalitarian future. Religious in nature, the Synagogue of Satan is, at its essence, a grotesque satanic cult. Its high council is composed of high priests of Lucifer, these men who literally worship death while practicing sexual magic and occult rituals of the blackest nature. But that's not what they'll present to you. Also, understand that this is not all Jewish people. A lot of them don't know. A lot of the commoners, the ones you work with and go to school with, these are not the people I'm talking about. But their higher-ups, when you go up through the ranks, their higher-ups know. They know who we are, and they know who they are, and they know who they call on. They know the God they serve. They serve Satan. So yeah, as a matter of fact, if you ever have a chance to read their Talmud, check out the horrible things it says in it about Christ. How he's boiling in a pool of excrement and semen. Yeah, check that out. The Zionist. The Luciferian cabal of high priests is supported by the vast majority of over 18 million people around the globe who call themselves Jews. Some of these people, a great many, are fanatical in their support of the Synagogue of Satan. They go by the name Zionist. Other Jews provide the cabal with only token nominal support. The millions of Zionist Jews are joined in their zealous embrace by a number of Gentiles who are also boastful of being Zionists. Although, don't get it twisted, we know that these Jews themselves are Gentiles. Anyway, their Gentile supporters on the whole are woefully ignorant of the horrific ultimate goal of the Synagogue of Satan. Their support and service to the cause of Lucifer helps drive the global Synagogue of Satan's never-ending successful campaigns of revolution, war, famine, financial calamity, and bloodshed. Thankfully, there are a few Jews, but only a few, who have been able to escape the almost irresistible spiritual impulse to ally themselves with Synagogue of Satan. And these are the whistleblowers that blow the whistle, you know. There are several books out there that you can look up where you can read from Jewish people telling how wicked their own people are. But I hate even calling them Jewish people. I'm calling them Jewish people because that's how you know them. But they are not Jews. To be specific, well, you know what? We're not going to get into that. That's another video for another day. But know this. These people are from the mountains. They are the Synagogue of Satan. They masquerade as Jews, but they are not. The Pope and the Roman Catholic Church. Okay. So, understand that the Roman Catholic Church has been at the forefront of Christian religion pretty much since our people fled into the mountains. During the Dark Ages, the Catholic Church slaughtered over 150 million Christians, and this atrocity is never mentioned today. The world had almost completely forgotten the many millions of people who were burned at the stake by the papacy because they wanted to worship God according to the Bible. The slaughter in Bosnia, Kosovo, Serbia, and Croatia is a direct result of the Vatican's involvement in this area. But you will never hear about it because the Jesuit-controlled news media not only refuse to mention it, but they lie about the situation to keep the papacy from being suspected of their true involvement. So understand that the Roman Catholic Church, who is being led by the Pope, is really an evil organization. And they're all into idolatry. Look at these pictures. Matter of fact, let's go back. Check out this hat. Dagon. The priest of Dagon wears the same Mitri hat the Pope wears. Rather fishy. That's what it says at the bottom. I don't know why my little taskbar is in the way. But anyway. You know, if you actually do the research, the Dagon is it's a pagan god, but to be more specific, if you change that O to an A, you'll come up with Dagon, and that's where you can trace it back to, because it was actually a female fish deity. Now, if you connect those dots, in the book of Enoch, it tells you that the women who slept with the fallen angels, who sinned, became mermaids. It doesn't say mermaids, it says sirens, but sirens are mermaids. And so that's how far back this thing goes. And you can tell from this picture, you've got blatant, in-your-face sun worship. Baal worship is not just an Old Testament story. It is alive and well. Right there you got your picture of Constantine, founder of Catholicism. Look at this. Look at this. Look at their blatant sun worship all over the place. And I just thought this picture was funny. Take a look at this. Does anybody else see what I'm looking at right here? Do you see the little symbol with the snakes twisting around? The same symbol that's on the jackets of all of your doctors today? Why is something that can be traced back to pagan origins in the hands of the Pope. And don't even get me started on them worshiping Mary. You know, it's... Do you see what the screen says? Yeah. It's ridiculous. Here, you have a bunch of different statues, but all of them kind of show the same thing. Number 1 says statue of pagan goddess Ashtoreth. 1 Kings 11:5-33. Check that out. Also called Ashtaroth. Judges 2:13, 10:6. 1 Samuel 7:3-4, 12-10. And the Queen of Heaven, Jeremiah 7:18, 44, 17, and 18. Images of her are very common in the archaeological record, indicating the popularity of her cult from the earliest Babylonian exile. Martyr statue of Mary, of Mother of Christ. Note the Roman Catholics call Mary the Queen of Heaven. Well, they're not really worshiping Mary when they say the Queen of Heaven. This goes back way before Mary. Do the research. I don't know why this taskbar thing is in my way. How do I make that go away? Anyway, you guys get it. You guys can screenshot this screen and do the research. Now let's move over into the Masons. So, the Masons actually control the Illuminati, the secret society. The Masons themselves, while they are not a secret, they operate in secrecy. And their true agenda is a secret. But the Masons are literally one of the darkest groups ever, especially after you start ascending to the higher degrees. Freemasonry joins all pagan groups in saying that man can become divine or perfect. George H. Steinmetz said, "Be still and know that I am God, that I am God." The final recognition in the all in all, the unity of the self with the cosmos, the cognition of the divinity of the self. Freemasonry has been so sensitive about any of its secrets ever becoming public knowledge. Masons in every age knew that if the general public knew the satanic core that existed in the heart of Freemasonry, the organization would either go into oblivion or would be arrested and put in jail. Now you know why Freemasonry insists that its initiates pledge that if they divulge any of Masonry's secret, he would agree to having his throat slit and be disemboweled. Manly P. Hall, another 33rd degree Mason, writes, "Man is a god in the making." Masonic author Joseph Fort Newton says, "To the profoundest insight of the human soul, that God becomes man, that man may become God." Shambhala has a bearing on the ancient origins of Freemasonry and upon its future in the coming Aquarian age. That last quote was by Lynn Perkins, another Masonic author. Now, it's very important when she says that it has its origins in Shambhala. Check this out. Let's see. Perkins says that today's Mason has no idea that Freemasonry comes from such an ancient, esoteric source. Most Masons today understand that the roots of their organization are in Satanism. When Perkins said that Freemasonry had its origins in Shambhala, he just identified Masonry as satanic. Shambhala is the mythological place where the Lord of the world, or Shiva is supposed to live. Now, if you take a look at that, at Shiva, check this out. It says, those who follow the path of faith use water and are known as the sons of Seth, while those who follow the path of the mind and action, the sons of Cain, who was the son of Samael, the spirit of fire. Today we find the latter among the alchemists, the Hermetic philosophers, the Rosicrucians, and Freemasons. So, no, I don't believe that Cain is the son of Samael. However, the fact that they think that he is, the fact that they think that they are of that order, Samael is another name for Satan. Look it up. Oh, wait a minute. I didn't want to go here just yet. Let's go back. There's something else I want to read for you. Let's see. So I wanted to read to you a letter that was written by a Mason, Albert Pike. I'm not going to read the entire letter, just a few excerpts. But I want to show you how deep this goes. Albert Pike wrote, before the First World War, he wrote, "The First World War must be brought about in order to permit the Illuminati to overthrow the power of the Tsars in Russia and of making the country a fortress of atheistic communism. The divergences caused by the agenter of the Illuminati between the British and Germanic empires will be used to foment this war. At the end of the war, communism will be built and used in order to destroy the governments and in order to weaken its religions." That's the first excerpt from Albert Pike's letter. Here's the second. "The Second World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the difference between the fascists and political Zionists. This war must be brought about so that Nazism is destroyed and that the political Zionism be strong enough to institute a sovereign state of Israel in Palestine. During the Second World War, international communism must become strong enough in order to balance Christendom, which would be then restrained and held in check until the time when we would need it for final social cataclysm." And the third excerpt says, "The Third World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the differences caused by the agenter of the Illuminati between the political Zionists and the leaders of the Islamic world. The war must be conducted in such a way that Islam and political Zionism mutually destroy each other. Meanwhile, the other nations, once more divided on this issue, will be constrained to fight to the point of complete physical, moral, spiritual, and economical exhaustion. We shall unleash the nihilists and the atheists. We shall provoke a formidable social cataclysm, which in all its horror will show clearly to the nation the effect of absolute atheism, origin of savagery, and the most bloody turmoil. Then everywhere, the citizens obliged to defend themselves against the world minority of revolutionaries will exterminate the destroyers of civilization, and the multitude, disillusioned with Christianity, whose deistic spirits will from that moment be without compass or direction, anxious for an ideal but without knowing where to render its adoration, will receive the true light through the universal manifestation of the pure doctrine of Lucifer. Brought finally out in the public view, this manifestation will result from the general reactionary movement which will follow the destruction of Christianity and atheism, both conquered and exterminated at the same time." So, as you can see, the world has pretty much been following the script that this Albert Pike penned out. Albert Pike was a Mason and a Satanist, and he didn't hide it. Now, 13 families. The 13 families are the Rothschilds, the Bruces, the Cavendish, the Medici, Hanovers, Habsburg, Krupps, Plantagenet, Rockefeller, Romanov, Sinclair, Warburgs, and Windsors. Let's see, looking for my notes on the 13 families. Okay, so understand that the city of London, which is controlled by the Rothschilds, at least the finance of it, is not a part of the UK. And the US Federal Reserve, which its finance private bank, is owned by the Rothschilds, not a part of USA. And the Vatican City, which is not a part of Italy, which is where the Pope is. You know, these institutions function as individual states operating under their own laws. Hence, there's no court of law on earth that could ever prosecute them. The multitude of secret societies in existence today operate as branches of a megacorporation which is owned by the Council of the 13 Families. Even though they have been handsomely rewarded for their work, the members of these secret societies are not the members of the elite bloodlines. But they don't know who their masters are, and they have no idea what their real agenda is. However, many people believe that these families themselves may have Nephilim blood. I'll leave it at that. That's another video for another day. You can definitely do your own research on that. Now, I also wanted to take a chance to talk about the way that the Rockefellers have totally taken over the American Medical Association and the FDA. So, to ensure the compliance from medical schools, the Rockefeller Foundation frequently insisted that medical schools place Rockefeller employees on their board of directors. The new legally enforceable medical monopoly paralleled the past Rockefeller monopoly from the petrochemical industry of past times. Instead of owning all the petroleum, the Rockefeller empire now controlled virtually all medicine. He owned the lion's share of the chemical industry, which would later be called the pharmaceutical industry. Throughout his life, John D. Rockefeller Sr. refused to take his own medicines. He used traditional holistic medicines for his own health. After the hijack of the medical schools, the true carnage of polio, heart disease, and cancer exploded. The American Cancer Society, guess when this organization was founded and by whom? It was founded by John D. Rockefeller Jr. in that magic year, 1913, while donating at Harvard University. Do you believe that they will someday announce a cure and cut themselves off from the truckloads of money? I doubt it. According to the U.S. Census, cancer is the second largest killer in the United States, but most of those people die from the treatments, not from the cancers. Pharmaceutical drugs are the fourth largest killer. The U.S. has the most dangerous, yet most expensive medical system in the world. It causes 60% of all U.S. bankruptcies. So, I just read that, and did any of you hear that this Rockefeller cat wouldn't take his own medicine, but he used traditional holistic medicines? That should be an eye-opener to some of you. The government. Now, these last two, government and education, I'm not really going to go into any sources because you should be able to put together from everything that I've just finished going into that they work in concert with each other. So, the government, you know, how many, I think we've had, no, I know for a fact, we have had 14 of our U.S. presidents have been Masons. And now Donald Trump, the 15th, is also a Mason. So understand that they have their hands everywhere. They have their hands in government. They have their hands in education. People say, how can education be a bad thing? Well, understand that government and education work together. And it used to be that a man learned from his father. He learned his father's trade, and he went and he was successful in doing what he had to do for his family. But the system now makes us dependent on the government, makes us dependent on education. You can't get certain jobs if you don't go through the education that they want you to have. Look at the quote on this picture. You can't make socialists out of individualists. Children who know how to think for themselves spoil the harmony of the collective society which is coming, where everyone is interdependent. So they don't like free thinkers. Yeah, take a second to let that sink in. So for this presentation, that's all I got. You know, there's so much I can expound on each and every one of these topics that I brought up, but the purpose of this video really is it's really meant to wake up a lot of people. I want people to know who we are. You know, we need to know who we are. We need to be waking up. And after you wake up, you need to realize who your enemy is. You need to realize the system that we live in. You need to realize how we are being treated and that we are suffering the curses. Thanks a lot. Y'all be blessed.